Chapter 7. A Gathering of Spirits. Jayden reached the familiar patee quickly, without meeting another soul along the way. As much as he would have liked to say his goodbyes and thank the family who had done so much for him, he did not want to risk putting them in the awkward position of helping him escape. Regretfully, he passed the stone dwelling and continued westward, the orbs above guiding him on a course to Grodin's beard. As he walked, he passed through thick groves of trees and crops of bizarre plants, avoiding any other rock columns that may have been populated. The lines between forest and field were often unclear, and there were no fences anywhere. Eventually, he came to a stream that was too violent to cross, the swift water gurgling around large boulders on its way to an unknown destination. There was no bridge visible. I wonder if it empties into Windthorn Lake. His parents had taken him on many excursions to the vast lake, fishing, hunting, and exploring. They always traveled with a sizable guard because of the troll clans that laid claim to various patches of the forest, yet he and his father had occasionally snuck away on their own. One time, when he was 15, they had slipped off in the early morning and scouted a troll camp on the eastern shore, returning shortly before nightfall. It was the only time he had ever seen his mother truly angry at his father. It must be spring by now. A good time to be there. Everything turning green again, with the smell of apple blossoms in the wind. As he made his way upstream, keeping an eye out for a bridge or an easier crossing, he caught a glimpse of something moving out of the corner of his eye. He turned to look, but there was nothing there. When he turned back, there was a man in gleaming white robes sitting on the ground with his arms crossed, his back resting against the trunk of a large pine tree. Jayden was sure he had not been there a moment before.
"Humph, about time,"
said the man in a gruff voice. His accent was peculiar, the vowels elongated to the point that it was difficult to discern what he had said. It was a little like the accents of the Drok-Ulfar, but much deeper. "I did not know I was expected," he replied slowly, still trying to puzzle out how the man had managed to materialize out of thin air. The gleaming stranger appeared brighter than his surroundings, as if some sort of glow was emanating directly from him, or as if his surroundings were not as bright as they should be, or both. Once again, he questioned the logic of accepting a dark pill from a known wielder of mystic arts. The stranger cocked an eye at him and grunted.
I have been waiting for you for a long time."
The man rose smoothly. There was a deadly grace to his movement, and for an instant Jayden saw the image of a huge sword hanging from his hip. He blinked and the image was gone.
"You're lost, I take it."
It was not a question. "Why would you say that?"
"Because you're going the wrong way, obviously."
"I am not," he replied, raising his voice only partly because of the roar of the stream.
"Shouldn't you be heading west?"
"I would if I could, but unless you see a way to cross this stream that I... Wait, how would you know where I'm going anyway?" The man grunted again, whether out of amusement or if it was just a habit. Jayden could not tell.
"Followed you. The witch didn't tell you much, did she?"
"How do you know—" The man let out a deep, hearty chuckle, a sound not all that different from his grunting.
"Where do you think you are, boy?"
"I am not a boy," he replied, growing a little irritated. The words came easier than he thought they would, his voice more confident. What he had been through in the past months was enough to destroy any childish illusions he had about the world, whether he wanted them gone or not. He was a man, and he did not feel like playing this stranger's games. "This is Druania," he said. "It is a peaceful place, uncorrupted by humanity." Looking him up and down, pausing at the curved sword, the stranger tilted his head to the side as if to point out the obvious contradiction to the statement. "I don't know who you are, or how you came to be here, but there are pressing matters that I must attend to. I don't have time for foolish questions."
"I won't argue with that,"
the man agreed.
"Best we were off."
"We? I don't even know who you are."
"I am Grodin."
He swallowed as he recognized the name. It was too much to be coincidence, even if the stranger did not have a beard.
"And you are Jayden Ryan Thorne, and you wish to leave Druania. The exit is this way."
With that, he walked directly toward the river. Where is he going? He must be crazy if he thinks we can cross here. Grodin entered the water and did not slow. He disappeared after a few steps, only to resurface moments later near the far bank. Jayden's jaw dropped. The man had walked straight through the raging stream, and the current had not so much as budged him. The whole situation was wrong. He looked around at the trees, the grass, and the rocks. It was faded, like a dream. That was it. He must be dreaming. The pill Margarine gave him had put him to sleep. But then, wouldn't he wake up on the bench back in the square at Dolfadar? What good did it do to leave Druania in a dream?
"You comin', or are you going to stand there all day wondering if you're dreaming? I thought there were matters that needed your attention."
"I am dreaming," he replied. Grodin grunted twice in quick succession.
"Very well. If you're dreaming, then it won't hurt to follow me, will it?"
He thought about that for a moment while he continued to survey the muted surroundings. "I am dreaming." Trying to reassure himself, he tugged roughly at a lock of his hair. It hurt. If I'm dreaming, then... Okay, I will follow you, but you must tell me where we are going.
"What does it matter?"
Grodin replied.
"One place is as good as the next in a dream, wouldn't you say?"
Yes, I suppose so. Approaching the raging stream, he paused on the shore and dipped one foot cautiously in the water. It was cool, though not the icy chill he had expected. There was also no current, at least not the way he had envisioned it. It felt as if a gentle, cool wind was blowing lightly against his foot. He stood up in the calf-high water. One step sunk him into his waist, and still nothing forced him downstream. He breathed deep and held it. The next step took him in over his head. When he opened his eyes, he found himself immersed in a vivid underwater world that he had never imagined existed in a dream or anywhere else. Bubbles streamed down from the churning water around boulders, injecting the scene with bright bursts of light from above. Translucent fish flew by in silvery flashes, hungry mouths searching for whatever would fit inside. Plant life clung tenuously to the stream bed, shallow roots pulled to the very verge of breaking, their bodies swaying in the maelstrom of the current. He walked slowly across a space that had a consistency somewhere between water and air, if it could be called walking. It was more a mix of swimming and hopping. He would have fallen in if he stretched his weight all the way forward, but needed an extra boost to move that he provided with his arms. His head was on a constant swivel as his eyes digested the peculiar sights. The scene was intense, life hanging on so precariously that it seemed it could all be gone in the blink of an eye. It was almost more than his senses could take. It was his experience with the most vivid dreams that they always reached the height of intensity when he was near waking. He had the feeling that if he could just make it to the other side, he would burst forth from the haunting stream and wake up. Onward he propelled himself toward that end. When he opened his real eyes, he would be back with the Drok Ulfar, and everything would be... what? Would it really be right? Considering the way his world had been irrevocably changed, would anything ever be all right again? Wouldn't right be to wake up in his own bed at Castle Crysin, with his mother waiting to sympathize with him over his bad dream? What if he could go back there, before his 18th name day, and change it all? Something about this place made it feel possible. There was a timelessness here that made the past seem closer, like he could almost reach it. His head crested the surface, and he expelled his breath in a giant burst. He could feel the cool of the water as it ran off his skin, though it was not wet. Panting, he brushed his hair out of his eyes, getting his bearings. Grodin stood waiting, his arms crossed again.
"Did you hold your breath the whole time?"
Jayden stared wordlessly at him. hope fading as he began to suspect that this was much more than a dream. "How long was I down there?" he asked.
"Long enough for a resourceful man to cook his dinner and eat it too."
Maybe it was just the exaggeration of an impatient elder. Maybe. He had watched Grodin make the short trip through the stream and knew that it should not have taken as long as it felt like it had. Would the man lie to him? Why? The overwhelming feeling that everything had been wrong since he had taken the dark pill was growing. "I'm not going to wake up, am I?" Grodin grunted, but the look on his face was sympathetic now.
"Not exactly."
He paused as if unsure how to proceed. Jayden got the impression that he was trying to be nice, but wasn't very good at it. He grunted again, louder this time, more like he was clearing his throat.
"Should have sent my wife. She's much better at these things. Anyway, she'll explain it all very soon."
"Am I dead?" Again, Grodin hesitated.
"Like I said, wife's the one ought to tell you this. She's better at it. Come on now, the sooner we get to the gate, the sooner you can have your questions answered."
He turned, not waiting for a reply, and walked a few steps, stopping again when Jayden did not follow.
"What's the matter now?"
Lost in his own thoughts, he said nothing. Grodin assumed a gruff manner once more, but it was forced, like he was trying to be rude but was not any better at that than at being nice.
"Well, I'm going. Take your time if you want, even though I thought you said you were in a hurry. Just keep heading west. Cave comes together there. Can't miss it. Oh, and don't take any side caverns. They go on forever. You could starve if—"
"I'm coming."
"What? Now you are coming?"
The man sighed, shaking his head.
"People can't make up their minds, can they? Come on, then."
Jayden followed his shining guide into the trees, with Grodin grumbling about this and that along the way and continuing to grunt at peculiar times. He decided that the sound was a tick of some sort and that it might be offensive to ask about it, so he didn't. It occurred to him that the man behaved as if he was unused to being around people. "Do you live here?" he asked.
"What? Oh, you could say that. Funny accent you've got, isn't it? It's my wife, Minora, and I. A few holdouts, strange lot those, walking around all glassy-eyed. And the warriors, of course."
"Warriors?"
"Ask Minora."
They continued in relative silence for what seemed like an hour. He no longer trusted time in this place. Jayden felt himself sinking into a silent depression. If he really was dead, which he was inclined to believe, men did not simply walk through raging rivers in the world of the living. He would never see his home again, or have a chance to avenge his family, his friends, his people. "What could I do if I were alive, anyway?" he thought. "The wizard could obliterate me with a word, or a flick of the wrist, or whatever it is that wizards do when they crush annoying insects like me. Better that I am dead." Caught up in his own dark thoughts, he failed to notice the castle.
"Here we are, lad. Drokehaven Keep."
Shining white walls alive with their own light, eerily similar to the glow that surrounded Grodin, caused him to squint when he first looked at them. Spires rose gracefully into the air, their pennants drooping in an eternal absence of wind. Empty windows gave the impression of caverns into another world. The massive gate stood open, its enormous doors spread wide, beckoning. Jayden eyed it all with a detached sort of awe. He had blanketed himself in sorrow, like a protective covering against hope, and he was not going to be stripped of it so easily. If his parents awaited him on the other side, he would rejoice when he saw them, not before. A few of the towers seemed to stretch so high they surely should have come up against some type of ceiling. He craned his neck up, and this time no amount of brooding in misery could contain his astonishment. A kaleidoscope of glowing white dots spiraled upward through a huge shaft in the rock of the ceiling, as if being sucked away into the unknown beyond. He could almost feel himself being lifted away with them, felt like he wanted to go. The bright specks swirled in a constant tornado of pure, brilliant light. It was dizzying to look at. Eventually, he was able to pull his eyes away, gasping with the effort. "What is that?"
"They call it Grodin's beard."
Grodin let out a particularly loud grunt at the name.
"Not the name I would have chosen, mind you."
"She said it was a constellation. That thing was never in any sky that I've ever seen."
"It's there,"
Grodin replied.
"You're just not supposed to see it."
"Are you the keeper of the dead?" Grodin sighed, then gave his loudest grunt yet.
"Boy, I'm just an old man who found what he wanted here."
They moved on without another word. The keep was really a fair-sized fortress, with 4 enormous towers of equal height adorning the corners of the perfectly square structure. It was not as sprawling as Castle Crysin, but the walls were thick, the blocks placed so well they appeared seamless. Jayden slowed when he noticed a kneeling Droka woman working on the wall to the right of the gate. There was a hairline crack, and she was smoothing mortar over it with the grace of an expert. She looked real enough, if a little transparent, with no light coming from her. "Pardon me, ma'am," he said. "Do you speak the nation's tongue?" The woman ignored him. "Ma'am?" Still she did not reply.
"She is upset. She wants to have another child. Varangi won't hear of it. Can't say I blame him either. They have 5 already."
"Can she hear me?"
"No. And before you ask, she can't see you neither."
Something in the woman's demeanor was sad. She seemed detached. A faraway look in her eyes spoke of unfulfilled dreams. To Jayden's surprise, Grodin bent down onto one knee and whispered in the woman's ear. She put down the wooden trowel she was using and sighed. A small smile touched her lips. "Can she hear you?"
"It's more of a feeling. She understands the meaning of my words, even if she doesn't hear them or know where they come from."
"What did you say to her?"
"I suggested that she—"
He grunted.
"Never you mind. I see there's a whole new set of questions boiling in that head of yours now, so we'd best get to Menorah."
They passed through the gates into an empty courtyard surrounded by buildings that looked to have never been used by anyone. The style was nothing like the Droka work he had seen. There were structures that appeared to be shops, with no signs or goods in sight, and even a large building that resembled an inn, with no chimney smoke or sound of any kind coming from inside its walls. After a few twists and turns, they found themselves outside of an imposing edifice set against the back wall of the keep, fronted by curved steps which climbed upward to a large dais encircled by round columns. They passed a few more Droka at work repairing the odd crack or etching into stone with their razor-sharp talons. One woman was carrying an armload of linen away from a small house. "Do they live here?"
"No."
"Then what are they doing?"
"It's for us, all of this. Meru thinks it makes us feel more at home."
He made a noise somewhere between a snicker and a grunt.
"He is a good man, but our notions of home are on opposite sides of the split, so to speak. There's only one thing makes me feel at home."
At that moment, a handsome woman with rosy cheeks and a proud nose stepped out onto the large dais. Her face was kind, the wrinkles at the corners of her brown eyes speaking more of countless smiles than of age. One hand rested on the shoulder of a young Droka girl. Her eyes narrowed suspiciously as she looked at Grodin, but the kindness never left. "Well?"
"Well, what, woman?"
"How did it go?" Her accent was almost identical to his.
"Very well, thank you. He didn't cry or pass out. I'd say it was a success."
The woman's playful suspicion turned into a warm smile for Jayden. "Welcome. I am Menorah. I apologize for my husband's manners. Sometimes the gentlest of hearts come in the most unlikely coverings." Grodin grunted at the comment, but said nothing. "I would have come to you myself," she continued. but I had this little one to attend to." With shock, he realized that the girl was the young singer who had been killed during the attack in the square at Dolfadar. "She is very brave. She insists that she will remain with us until her parents arrive. We will see what time makes of that." Feelings of guilt immediately resurfaced. "I'm sorry," he told the girl. "The men came because of me." Minora hesitated before repeating his words to her in Drokolfarian. The girl made a quiet reply, her round blue eyes never leaving Jayden. "She wants to know if her mother and father were injured in the attack." "No," he replied, shaking his head. A tear ran down the girl's cheek, and she stepped forward. Taking his hand, she looked up into his eyes and spoke. "She says she does not blame you for the crimes of others," Minora translated. "She says that events that we cannot foresee are not our faults. If you cannot be rid of the guilt, then there is one thing you can do for her." "Anything." "She asks you not to forget her people." "Never," he whispered, and meant it. Grodin made a wry face.
"An easy word to say, Prince, for one who knows so little of time."
"I could not forget the Drokolfar if I wanted to," he said truthfully, "and I would not want to."
See how you feel when you're back with your own kind before you make promises you can't keep."
"My own kind? You mean I can go back?" "Of course," said Minora, shooting a look of surprise at her husband. "You did not tell him?" Grodin squirmed under her gaze, clearing his throat loudly.
"He didn't ask."
There was an uncomfortable pause, and just when it seemed that Grodin was sure to receive a tongue-lashing, Minora surprised both men by smiling. She reached forward and smoothed a patch of wayward hair on the stout man's head. "You did well, my love." Grodin grunted.
"Yes, well, I should be off to gather the warriors then."
He turned to Jayden.
"You'll need a proper escort. It's dangerous on the outside."
With that, he left them and disappeared inside the building. "I'm not dead?" He was not entirely sure if being alive again was a blessing or a curse. "Your body is strong, but it will not remain so if you stay here. You must leave this realm. The longer you are here, the more difficult the return will be." "I thought she poisoned me," he mumbled, half to himself. Minora grasped his shoulder in understanding. Something in her manner reminded him of his mother. "We have known you were coming for some time now." It was only a slight hesitation, quickly covered, but he had the distinct feeling that she knew more than she was telling. He trusted her. She did remind him of his mother, but he was sure she was hiding something. His mother could never keep secrets from him either. Sometimes he had the feeling that the whole world was hiding something. He shook his head to clear it. "Now I'm being paranoid. I haven't slept for a full day, at least. How does that affect me here? What could she be hiding?" He decided finally that it was best not to ask, since he may not want to know the answer. A thought occurred to him. "Are my parents here?" "No. None but the Drokolfar and some of those chosen to protect them come to Benwi Druenia, what we call this place. In their language it means something like the Midway. Your parents would have crossed elsewhere, to rejoin with the thoughts or to choose their own paths in the cosmos." "Then why are you?" He left the question hanging. "My husband and I were approached by Father Alamon long ago. He charged us to protect this place, and we accepted willingly. The spirits of the Drokolfar must not be exposed to the outside. Even those among our own ranks, the Droka warriors, may not venture forth for fear of being discovered by agents of the jealous thoughts that roam the greater realm we are in." She looked down at the girl, her eyes far away. "Protecting the Drokolfar is our sole reason for remaining here. If not for that charge, we would have ascended long ago. Some day we will." A loud grunt broke the silence that followed her words.
"We're ready."
Grodin stood surrounded by a small group of men and 2 women. It had been only a few minutes, and Jayden had not seen them approach, but then time was tricky here. Minora tilted her head. "So few, my love?"
"Humph. We are hoping to avoid battle. We want to protect the lad, and stealth is the best way to do that. These are the best of the best. There is nothing we can't handle apart from a full-on assault, in which case we don't have enough warriors in all of Binwi Druinia to make a difference anyway. Only the keep could withstand that sort of an onslaught."
"Have hostilities become so tense on the outside?" A short, hefty man with thick limbs and broad features stepped forward. There was a patch over his left eye, with a long, gruesome scar running directly through it from his scalp line to the center of his cheek, giving the impression of a permanent scowl. Long arms hung down an unnatural length from his broad shoulders. He looked to Groden, who gave him a nod.
"Go ahead, Harster. She has a right to know." "I led a patrol out to the shores of the lake this morning. We lost 3, and the rest of us were chased south by a seething mob. It took us hours before we could double back to the tree. If we journey forth with a large party now, it'll be all-out war."
Minora was visibly troubled by the news, and just as visibly tried to put on a strong front for the sake of her guests. "Do not tell me their names now. Tomorrow we will enter them into the lists of the fallen heroes and mourn them properly. We have been at war since the beginning, and there are casualties in any war." Harster shifted uncomfortably. "Is there something else?"
"It's just that they ain't never struck so close to home before. It's almost as if they know where we are, but they're waiting for something."
"You could be more right than you know." Jayden spun to find Magharine standing casually beside Meru, as if they had been there the entire time. "How did you get here?" he blurted. "I walked, the same as you did," she replied casually, then turned to address everyone. "Listen to me all. The secrecy of the Drokul Far is at an end. The jealous thoughts now whisper in these once secure caverns." A stunned silence followed her pronouncement. "That is not possible," cried one of the female warriors.
"She speaks the truth, Lilin,"
Meru affirmed.
"I was there when Hysanthor confessed his crimes. He was indeed a sorcerer in the employ of Brother Grisland, as our young prince here so boldly proclaimed before the thoughts and everyone. If not for his warning, we may not have known until the people started killing one another. But that is not the worst of it, I'm afraid. Shortly after I assumed the staff of office from my mother, as the illusion wars were just beginning to ravage Alnorda, a young droker named Neret went missing. After an exhausting search, we gave him up for dead. We assumed he must have fallen in a hole somewhere and broken his neck, or perhaps become a victim of the mountain's fiery blood. According to the sorcerer, he was taken."
"Taken," Minora repeated. "As far back as that? But that could mean—"
"They may have long been planning some grand demise for our poor unwitting charges," the lore master finished. "Where is the sorcerer now?" Groden growled.
"With his masters," replied Magharine matter-of-factly. "He is dead?" The glint in those emerald eyes answered his question better than any words could have.
Groden grumped. "You should have tortured that slimy Lord of Hagmere for information as soon as he took up residence in the fortress. We all knew there was something off about him."
"If I had known what he was, I would have." Strangely, Jayden felt no joy at the news of Hysanthor's demise. How many times had he dreamed of running him through with the blade of his father's sword, or bashing his head with a rock? Now, even that vision stirred nothing in him. He wondered what his mother would think of his newfound apathy. Would she prefer it to bloodlust? He had always tried to be a moral person, but now he felt lost. A rock buffeted by invisible winds that did not stir him. It was hard to imagine just then that he could ever feel strongly about anything again. Brother Grislin's betrayal of Crysin is equally disturbing, said Meru. However, it does not necessarily mean he has betrayed the great thoughts. I do not think we should do anything rash and show our hand just yet, but rather plan for future eventualities. The thoughts chose Grislind as their ambassador for a reason, as they do all of us. I suspect he can be reasoned with, at the very least.
What do you think?
Grodin asked Magharine. We do not always know why the thoughts do what they do. He was ever the most ambitious of us, but fear of Alamon has always been enough to keep him at bay. What may have changed to precipitate his betrayal, I cannot say. I sensed that the sorcerer was deathly afraid of him, so it could be they were not working toward the same end. Or it could just have been that he was terrified Grislind would find out about the boy. Me? You were supposed to have been dealt with, she told him bluntly. But Hysenthal kept you alive as a bargaining chip. If Grislind had known of your imprisonment, he would have killed the man himself. It was the sorcerer who got to you first, before Grislind could locate you. The fool was playing a very dangerous game. Why would Grislind care what happens to me? He asked bitterly. There's no way that I can stop him. He cares because the fire law is in your blood. If she was expecting a reaction, she was disappointed. He had no idea what she was talking about. What does that mean? It is a long tale. I will touch on the more pertinent points only. When the split was made, the greater essences of the planet were released from inside and contained in 5 stones. We mages have some control over them, but we dare not touch them directly, or they would obliterate us where we stood. After their release, Alamon used the powers granted him by the great thoughts to imbue 5 mortals with the ability to control them completely. The mortals were given these powers to combat a new threat that had been released by the actions of King Zedith, the Demon Lords. Demon Lords? Like everyone, he had been told that the split was created to halt the onslaught of the demons and give mankind a chance to survive, but nothing about any magic stones or demon lords. Why are you telling me this? Those mortals were given a sacred trust. They and their descendants were chosen to be the guardians of the stones. You are the descendant of Mandan Sheeran, the soldier whom the Protector chose to accompany him to Tarangareth, the ancient capital of Sidion. His infant son, who Alamon named Gregor Ryanthorn, was the first guardian of the Stone of Fire. The duty is now yours, after the death of your father. If you want to have any hope of helping your people, then you must reclaim your birthright. You must reclaim the stone. He would have laughed, had everyone not been staring at him straight-faced. Magharine's words had come as a shock to no one but him. They already knew. Every one of them knew. You are wrong, he said, shaking his head stubbornly. My father would have told me if that were true. That's too important to keep secret. I suspect that he intended to tell you, but never had the chance. All harshness was gone from her voice now, replaced by something that might have been sympathy. How old are you? 18. Did the attack on your home happen before or after your last name day? It was on my name day. Just when you would have come into your power, she concluded with a nod. Grislind must have been planning the attack for some time. It was probably the reason he offered his services to your father in the first place. Your father was a lore-master, Jayden. Like Meru, he commanded the Stone of Fire, the very essence of it. It is your birthright. You must reclaim it. It was not something that Jayden liked to think about, But he had heard stories of strange things happening when his father went into battle. Once, on the day of darkness, an entire legion of the enemy had supposedly been engulfed in flames after surrounding King Urien and his royal guard. It had been heralded as a miracle at the time. Now he was not so sure. "There were stories," he murmured, "but I never believed they were true. I thought they were just embellishments, miracles on the battlefield." He tried to swallow, but his throat had gone dry.